If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, or if you require answers to specific healthcare questions or concerns, you should consult your physician or healthcare provider and not depend solely on information presented in this program.
Coming up today on To Your Health, heart disease. We know it's the number one killer of men in the United States, but did you know it's also the number one killer of women? Many women with heart disease suffer in silence, not even knowing that they have the disease. Fortunately, women can take steps to understand their unique symptoms and begin to reduce the risks. Today, we'll talk to a leading cardiologist who's going to tell us what women need to do to treat, prevent, and even reverse the symptoms of heart disease. We'll also hear from an entrepreneur who's dedicated to spreading the word about heart disease to her community. And we'll be in the kitchen with God's love we deliver to get some heart-friendly cooking tips. That's all coming up today on To Your Health. We're talking today about heart disease, the number one killer of women, causing 1 in 3 deaths each year. Particularly at risk are women of African American and Hispanic descent. To help us understand what's going on here, we're joined by Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum, an attending cardiologist and the director of Women's Heart Health at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City. She's the author of Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum's Heart Book, Every Woman's Guide to a Heart Healthy Life. She's also a national spokesperson for the Go Red for Women campaign and chairperson of Go Red for Women in New York City. Dr. Steinbaum, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So that is a staggering statistic. 1 in 3 women dies of heart disease.
When we think about it, every 80 seconds, a woman dies of heart disease. And it comes down to education, awareness, and really the treatment paradigms that have been in place already. We've always thought of heart disease as a man's disease. And the reality is 90% of women in this country has at least one risk factor of heart disease. And heart disease in women, when it happens, the outcomes are significantly worse. Oftentimes they're sicker, and that's partially why these death rates are higher.
And why are the outcomes worse for women than for men?
Usually when they present, they have a lot more issues, a lot more problems. Their symptoms are often much more subtle. So a man will get this crushing chest pain, blue in the face. We've seen those pictures. Women get shortness of breath, jaw pain, back pain. It'll be much more subtle. Nausea, sweating, even fatigue can be a sign of heart disease. And instead of going to the doctor or going to the emergency room, because there aren't those significant symptoms, they'll kind of say, maybe it'll pass, I'll feel better. I have too much to do, I don't want to bother anyone. Those are the things I often hear. And the reality is, as they put it off, they get sicker and sicker. And sometimes by the time they present to the hospital, they're just not doing as well.
It's too far gone.
It's too far gone. And so that's one of the reasons.
Why is it that women have different symptoms than men? Do you know why?
It's a little bit because of the anatomy. And often with men, the heart attack happens in these major big arteries. Blood flow is cut off right in the middle of the artery. And because of that lack of oxygen, there's this significant chest pain. In women, a lot of times the heart attacks happen in the smaller arteries. So they're tinier, little, what we call ischemia, lack of oxygen is ischemia. And they're happening in such a way that they're so small and so little that the symptoms aren't as intense. Oftentimes I hear women say, I had a feeling something was wrong, but I wasn't sure. And so you might not feel right. You might feel that little nausea. It comes and it goes. And that's part of how you know it's your heart. When it comes and goes and then it persists, you have to think about your heart.
Why is it that Hispanic women and African American women are more at risk?
So this all comes down to risk factors. And when we think about who gets heart attacks and heart disease, it depends on blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar levels, diabetes, obesity and overweight, smoking, sedentary lifestyle, family history, and stress. And then we talk about diet and alcohol as other risk factors as well. When we look at African American women and Latina women, we see a greater amount of risk factors. By age 20, 50% of African American women will have high blood pressure. And the incidence of overweight and obesity and diabetes are higher in these minority populations. And because of that, the incidence of heart disease is higher.
So, what are some of the most important ways to prevent heart disease in women? It sounds like a heart healthy lifestyle, a heart healthy diet is probably one of the most important ways.
Here's the most interesting thing. 80% of the time, heart disease is preventable. 80% of the time. It's staggering because all other diseases we don't have control over necessarily. So when we think about the fact that this is in our power, we can do something about this. It's amazing to think about. So you mentioned a heart healthy life. What is that? Basics, diet, exercise, sleeping, and I like to use the word self-care because without putting yourself first, all of these other things never happen.
That's a really good point.
It's a major issue. So when we talk about what are we going to eat, it's not about how you're going to rush to get the kids to school on time or what are you going to squeeze in at work. It's really about consciously and deliberately taking steps and putting together a plan to eat a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables and nuts and lean meats and fish and fruits and grains and, all of these colorful, wonderful foods that are high in nutrients. That's what you have to think about. It's really easy to go to the nearest fast food place. It's really quick to get a piece of pizza, but that's not how you're going to keep your heart healthy. You have to plan.
Right. And obviously exercise is another important part. But when I was looking through your book, one of the things that you mentioned, and I really thought it was great, was, and I want you to elaborate on it, you said, it's also important that we lead from the heart.
Yeah.
And I wondered what you meant by that.
My biggest personal mantra is really all of us need to live from the heart. And what that means is really understand who you are and what you need and what you're about and how you feel and how you think. And it's all centered right in our hearts. Ultimately, when you take care of yourself, when you feed yourself the right way, when you exercise and move and sleep, you tend to start doing things that you enjoy. When you find your passion, your purpose, you're surrounded by love, you learn to laugh. This is living from the heart. And this is how we live the most heart-healthy life we can.
And that can actually make a difference in your long-term overall health.
Believe it or not, how you wake up every morning, whether the glass is half full or half empty, how optimistic you are, how you can laugh versus get stressed about things. It changes your heart health. So how you really look at yourself and how you look at the world makes a huge difference in keeping your heart healthy.
So if you are someone, though, who is dealing with heart disease, what are some of the treatments that are most common these days for heart disease?
So it all comes back to the risk factors. And everything is about bringing those risk factors down. So yes, we can do it with diet and exercise, but then there are also amazing medications that really are helpful in bringing the cholesterol down, bringing the blood pressure down, bringing the sugars down. We have diagnostic tools, echocardiograms, stress testing, angiograms. All of these things can look for blockages in the arteries if we have symptoms. And ultimately, going to your doctor is the first step, and really getting these numbers checked. Knowing your risk is important.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because we go to our doctors, if we're wise, once a year at least for an annual checkup. Do we need to be going to a cardiologist once a year to get our heart health statistics?
It's so important that in your general checkup, you get these numbers checked. I would tell you that's critical. But if you have a family history of heart disease, that's when you might want to check in with a cardiologist earlier in life, even if you don't have symptoms.
Mm-hmm. So overall, the most important things that a woman can do in order to prevent heart disease would be?
First off, know your numbers. You have to know your risk, and you have to go through that risk and be brutally honest with yourself, such as, am I eating the right foods? And I hear so many times my patients will say, I eat so healthy. I'm like, all the time? Well, except for those potato chips at 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, okay. So you have to be really, really honest with yourself about what you do. And getting those numbers checked, knowing what your goals are and how you're going to get there, that's the most important thing. I think second, there's no such thing as smoking. If you smoke, you have to quit. Don't ever even try it, look at it. It doesn't exist. And then really putting into your life these basic components of eating right and exercising and moving, and also stress management. And I think this is a very critical piece. We are all under stress. Nothing's ever going to take it away. But how we deal with it, how we manage it, is so critically important to keep your heart healthy, keeping those stress hormones down, those fight or flight hormones down, which actually rev up your blood pressure and cause heart disease. Having a daily practice to manage that stress is so essential.
Great, and we're going to be talking about more in just a moment. When we come back, we'll be joined by Joy Williams, founder of GospelFit and an advocate for heart health among African American women. And we'll talk about what it really means when your heart skips a beat. Welcome back. This is To Your Health, and today we're talking about women's heart health. We often hear the expression, my heart skipped a beat, when something surprising and pleasing has happened, but it doesn't always refer to something good. An irregular heartbeat is called atrial fibrillation, and it can actually be quite dangerous. Atrial fibrillation increases the risk of stroke and heart disease and currently affects 2.7 million Americans. Today, we're joined by cardiologist Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum and Joy Williams. Joy is the founder of GospelFit, a health and wellness platform whose goal is to educate and support African Americans, particularly women, and whose life completely changed when she was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, also known as AFib. It's so good to have you with us, Joy.
Thank you.
So how did you discover that you had AFib?
Well, really what happened was I was hanging out with a friend, and I was at the subway station and realized I had a book that belonged to her and ran up the stairs. And then my heart never went back to a regular rhythm. So at the time, I was working at the Federal Reserve Bank, and when I went to work, they had an EKG machine, and they took me to the hospital after telling me I was fine, but they needed to take me to the hospital just to make sure.
But when you ran up the stairs, did you feel something?
Well, yeah, so I could feel my heart beating. It was a strong beat, but that didn't disturb me until I sat on the train when I got back down to the train, and then every fourth beat was, I could feel it through my chest. So I could basically feel, which normally you can't feel your heart beating. So I could feel it, and it never got to the point where I couldn't feel it. So I thought it was okay for a while. And meanwhile, I was 22 years old, so you're not as taking things as seriously. So, but I finally did go have it checked out at work, and then I went to the hospital, and then they said I had AFib. To correct it, it was the first time I had a cardioversion, which is they shock you. And I always tell people they shock you like they shock dead people, but it's a little bit different. But they anesthetize you, and then they shock me to start the heart rhythm back again.
Okay, that's scary.
If you're thinking about it, it's scary. It wasn't scary at the time. Again, I was young and sort of like, yeah, whatever you have to do to make it work. So after going through that and then thinking about it was kind of scary. And being anesthetized was scary to me, first of all. And then actually being shocked sort of leaves burns on you, which you never think about, because they never talk about that when you see it on television.
So I want to bring Dr. Steinbaum in here for a minute. So can you tell us, though, what it is? So we understand atrial fibrillation is an irregular heartbeat, but what does that really mean?
So there are 4 parts to the heart. There are 2 chambers, we call them on top, called the atria, and 2 on the bottom called the ventricles. And in that top part of the heart, usually the beat starts there. So you know the bump, 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 the normal heart rhythm. What happens in the atria is the rhythm becomes erratic and irregular. And it starts being focused in multiple different locations. So instead of bump, bump, it goes bump, 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 all over the place. And instead of squeezing, it fibrillates. And when it fibrillates, the biggest concern is that blood clots can develop and lead to a stroke. It sounds so barbaric to be shocked.
And is that the
way.
most normal kind of treatment? That's the way people are treated?
When people first go into atrial fibrillation, and as you perfectly described, you get sedated and then literally shocked. And what happens is we try to override this irregular rhythm with the normal bump, bump. And oftentimes we're able to get that fibrillating rhythm into its normal squeezing function, especially if it happens sooner than later. So we know the longer you're in atrial fibrillation, the more you have it, the more chance you have to stay in it. So you did the right thing. If you have that irregularity, you can feel your heart beating, you have to get it checked right away.
So what are the treatments and how has your life changed since you were diagnosed?
So early on, because I'm on the younger side of having it, the majority of the people who have it are over 65. So having it at 22, I spent a lot of times going to cardiologists, and most 22-year-olds don't have cardiologists. So I've had about 4 different ones now. And over this time, the protocol has changed. So I've been taking different medicines, and basically, and right now they're to thin the blood to prevent the possibility of stroke, and then to make sure that my heart rate, my resting heart rate, doesn't get too high, which would cause muscle damage.
But have you had to make any lifestyle changes as a result?
Well, basically, it's to be healthier, just to make sure that I stay in better shape and not have those other things that people normally associate with heart disease. So it's to have, a low blood pressure, regular to low blood pressure, and not to have high cholesterol and those things. So I'm more conscious of those things. And I'm also more conscious of my heart, because whenever I'm in AFib, and it's happened other times since, I can usually tell it before I have to go to the doctor. I know what it feels like, but oftentimes, so I have to be aware of that. And other things can cause it too, as stress can, or alcohol, but they don't really know what triggered it originally. So I just have to be very aware all the time.
And I want to bring in GospelFit. You're an activist, you're an entrepreneur, and you support and educate other women around heart health, African-American women. So what is GospelFit and what are you doing?
So GospelFit, well, we focus on bringing faith, fitness, and fun together to educate people and to help change behavior. So one of the things I think that happens with people is when you focus on the disease part, they get really afraid and don't want to hear. But if we can try to make things that are fun to do and change behavior in a group, then we can have impact and have more positive health outcomes. So we'll do some gospel aerobics, or we'll have workshops, and then we'll do other things that are fun. So we've had some 5Ks, they're run, walk, praise. So there's gospel involved in that as well. It's to make the activity fun, so it's not just a drudgery. You're not just doing it because you have to stay healthy, but you're doing it because you're with people you like, and it's also a fun activity to do.
And quickly, as we're wrapping up here, what do you tell women who receive an AFib diagnosis?
This is not going to kill you. That's the first thing, right? This is something that you have to live with, you have to manage, you have to deal with, and you have to take care of yourself. And just like you said, it's about diet, it's about exercise. I love the fact that you have a group atmosphere, that group support, that faith, that coming together and doing something that's fun. It's all good for your heart. But this isn't the end. This is about managing it, dealing with it, and taking care of it.
So it sounds, Dr. Steinbaum, like this is a condition that you have to manage, but there isn't a cure yet?
We're working on it. It's one of those things that is not easily curable. As Joyce said, it's about medication, it's about lifestyle intervention, it's eating right, it's exercise and keeping the blood pressure down, the cholesterol down, your stress down. But that cure, we're getting there. Step by step, there are new things out there, but the cure, it's getting closer. Not quite there yet.
But you have optimism.
I have optimism for the future.
Thank you both so much for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when we come back, eating for heart health. We're going to be in the kitchen with God's love we deliver. Welcome back. We're here with Chef Andre Daquigan and nutritionist Lisa Zullig. They're from God's Love We Deliver in New York City. God's Love We Deliver was founded in 1985 when one woman began delivering food on her bicycle to a man dying of AIDS. Today, God's Love cooks 6,200 meals each weekday and delivers them to clients living with all kinds of life-altering illnesses throughout New York City, Westchester and Nassau counties, and Hudson County in New Jersey. Today, Andre and Lisa are here to show us some of their favorite heart-healthy dishes that you can make at home. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So what are we making today? It looks like salmon.
It is salmon. We're going to make cilantro salmon today. It's going to get served with roasted cauliflower and rice and pigeon peas.
And this is a dish, Lisa, that you would serve to patients, clients with cardiovascular disease.
Absolutely. It's on our menu. We serve it to all of our clients, those with cardiovascular disease. And it's a healthy meal. So we serve it to all of our clients.
For absolutely anybody.
Yeah.
Salmon is one of my favorite dishes. So how do we start?
So we're going to start this off on...
What kind of oil?
This is extra virgin olive oil blended with a little bit of canola oil because it has a higher smoke point.
And how long are you going to leave it in here?
Well, I am going to start it off skin side down, and hopefully we're going to get that skin nice and crisp. We're going to flip it over and we're going to finish it in the oven. So it should only take a couple of minutes on the stovetop.
Now, Lisa, fish is good to eat a few times a week, am I right?
Yes, at least 2 times a week is what's recommended. And this fish is a fatty fish, which is high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is also anti-inflammatory. That reduces the clogging of the arteries and your blood cholesterol.
So that's why salmon is so good for
Yes.
people with cardiovascular.
Yes, exactly.
And it's delicious.
It is.
I think we might be just about ready to flip this guy over. As you can see, the skin is nice and crisp. We'll get a quick sear on the bottom, and then we're going to finish it off in the oven.
Now, why do you put it in the oven? What does that do? Just makes it yummier or what?
The oven, we're roasting it off because it's less of a direct source of heat. It's going to kind of encase the salmon in a more gentle heat, so it gets roasted off a little more gently.
Okay, and what's next?
What's next? Let's see, we're going to pan roast some cauliflower. Right?
Now, is there something about cauliflower, Lisa, that's heart healthy? I always think that almost any vegetable is heart healthy.
It is a high source of vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, which is heart healthy. And it also contains things that reduce your blood cholesterol.
Wow, I had no idea.
Hand me the turmeric and...
Turmeric. Now, I was just in Costa Rica, and I had a turmeric tonic, and it was delicious. Everybody raves about turmeric as being so unbelievably healthy. Why is it?
It's antibacterial, so if you're feeling sick, it's something to add to your food. It also adds a beautiful flavor and color to the food.
It sure does.
Yeah.
So I've just added the cauliflower to the seasoned oil, and as you can see, we've got a lovely color to that, right? And you can smell those
Looks delicious.
seasons.
But you don't want to get it.
stuff.
You don't want it to get too brown.
No,
right? You don't
not
want it to get too burnt.
That's right. That's exactly right. So you got to be aware of that, especially if you have seasonings in your oil, right? So we're going to do that. I think I can add just a tiny bit more fat there, so we get a little better coating. Right?
So you deliver these meals to clients all over New York City, the New York City area, and the various counties I mentioned, and you just show up and they just heat it up. It's all prepared.
Yeah, it's cooked for them and frozen, and then it's in a container that they're able to either put in their oven directly or their microwave, or store for later when they feel like eating.
I'm going to finish this off in the oven. It's going to join my salmon fillet in here, like so, and hopefully those will finish. The salmon takes only a few minutes, probably about 5 minutes or so, and the cauliflower probably a little bit longer, maybe about 10, especially with a portion so small.
Okay, and then there's also going to be rice.
There is going to be rice, and through the magic of television, because the rice takes about 20 minutes, right? I made this earlier. This is a yellow rice, again with the paprika and the turmeric, right? And a little bit of garlic and onion. And this is going to get served with our gandulas, right? Our pigeon peas.
And this is a meal that you deliver every day of the week? Is it just like Monday is salmon day? Or
Fridays.
Friday's is salmon day?
That's right, Friday.
Good.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very, very good for the archdiocese, I suppose.
So do you want to check on the salmon?
Of course.
Okay.
Let me, should be just about ready. Let's take a peek. Oh, yeah.
So now how do you know that the fish is ready? It's so confusing for people because you don't want to overdo your fish.
Oh, you totally don't want to overdo your fish. I think it's a little bit of experience. Generally speaking, you want to kind of undercook it. You know, most people tend to turn it into a choux, which is not good. You want it on the medium to medium rare side, especially with salmon. It's so lovely when it's perfectly cooked. So I'm just copying a feel here very quick, and just through my experience, I can tell it's about medium rare. And so that should be done, and we're waiting on our cauliflower.
Yeah, and I usually take a fork, and then I ruin the way the fish looks because I'm trying to see if it's ready.
We all do that. We've all done that. We've all been there. And, you know, that's a learning process, right? So if that's what it takes for you to cook fish and eat fish, go for it.
But generally, you would say like 5 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, fish is very quick. There's no connective tissue or anything like that to kind of stop the cooking process, you know? So it's very quick. And again, you don't want to overcook it because it tends to not taste as well.
And you want to check the cauliflower?
I do. Let me take a peek. This tends to be take a little bit longer than fish, of course.
What's the temperature on the oven here?
You know what? I've got it pretty high. It's probably about 375 or so.
It smells good.
And we've got that turmeric, and we've got the garlic, and we've got the shallot all nicely melded in there. And I think we're ready to plate, if you like.
Okay,
Yeah,
go.
why not, right? Can you get rid of that, please? And
Getting ready to plate means getting ready to eat, right?
oh yeah, always everybody's favorite. I'm gonna grab the plate from back here.
Looks lovely.
Very good. So we'll start off with the rice and pigeon peas.
Oh, it looks like you're trying to make it look beautiful on the plate.
Well, you know, you might as well. If you're gonna do something, you might as well try to make it look nice, right? I'm gonna take some of the cauliflower.
And the cilantro, is it a cilantro pesto paste?
It is. It's a cilantro pesto, right? So we've got the fresh cilantro, and it's blended with extra virgin olive oil and just a tiny bit of salt. And finally,
The salmon.
our salmon, right? And we're gonna finish it off. Let's see, careful, that's hot. I think I have a spoon over there, right? And we're gonna take this cilantro pesto and just finish it.
Oh, wow. This looks like a restaurant.
Like so, you know, I think the food that we make here at God's Love is restaurant worthy, and it gives people, it's gotta look good, it's gotta taste good. You know, otherwise it doesn't do
Does it show up
anything.
looking this good at their doors?
You know what? This is the exact meal. It's not served on a plate. but
Right.
This is the exact
That's
meal.
amazing. That's amazing. So can I try?
Of course you can.
Okay. Okay, I don't want to be, oh gosh. You know, you try to do it nice for TV and then it just doesn't work. Mmm, so soft. It's delicious.
Oh, terrific.
Mm. Rice and cauliflower. Mmm. 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 It's so delicious. Really healthy. Mm.
Terrific.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So that's our show today. Check out our show page for more information on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Here is To Your Health.